I'm Ian, 26 years old, and if I had to sum up my relationship with my family in one word, it'd be tolerated. Not loved, not respected, just tolerated. I used to think it was me, that I was too sensitive, too different, too much. But over the years, I started noticing a pattern. Every time something good happened in my life, my parents found a way to make it feel like a fluke. Every mistake, proof I was a failure. Every success, a fluke or someone else's doing. My younger sister, Elise, on the other hand, she could do no wrong. The golden child. Even when she messed up, they'd twist themselves into pretzels trying to defend her. I remember once she crashed my dad's car while texting. His words? "It's just a car. Don't be so dramatic." 2 weeks earlier, I'd left the garage door open by mistake and got a 30-minute lecture about responsibility and how hard he worked for everything. That's the kind of family dynamic I was dealing with. Growing up in that environment shaped me in ways I'm only beginning to unravel. I became quieter, more observant. I stopped sharing things. When I got into college on a scholarship, my mom's reaction was, "Wow, guess they're not as competitive as they used to be." When I landed my first real job in film editing, my dad muttered, "So, you're playing with movie clips for a living now?" Meanwhile, Elise started dating some guy named Carson, a trust fund baby with a jawline and no spine. My parents adored him, of course. Every family dinner turned into a showcase of their perfect relationship. I'd sit quietly, fork pushing cold mashed potatoes, while my mom gushed about Elise's wedding plans as if I didn't exist. Still, I was invited to the wedding. Kind of. The invitation had been addressed to Ian and guest, even though they knew I was single. That little detail felt intentional. I RSVP'd yes, though. I had my reasons. The ceremony was set to take place at this expensive vineyard upstate, the kind of place where everything smells faintly of overpriced roses and everyone pretends to know the difference between Cabernet and Merlot. When I arrived, one of the ushers handed me a name card and said, "You're at table 19. I didn't think anything of it until I walked into the reception hall and realized table 19 was shoved into a corner next to the speaker system and filled with actual kids. Not teenagers, kids. One of them was coloring on the tablecloth. Another was making a fort out of bread rolls. That's when I felt it. The old heat behind my ears. That flush of humiliation I thought I'd grown out of. I turned around and saw my dad across the room, drink in hand, whispering something to my uncle. They both looked over. My dad gave me that tight, insincere smile, then casually made his way over like he hadn't just orchestrated another public jab at my expense. "Try not to ruin this," he said under his breath, leaning close. "Like you ruin everything else." My uncle chuckled behind him. My mom caught my eye, then looked away. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, because I knew something they didn't. You see, over the past few months, while Elise had been obsessing over flower arrangements and guest lists, she'd also hired me to put together her wedding video. Not the official one. They'd paid some artsy couple from Brooklyn $5,000 for that. No, she wanted a side project. A slideshow. One that would play during the toasts. Just something fun, she'd said. Cute clips of us growing up. Family memories. Some videos from college. You know, I'd played the part. Of course, I said. I'd love to, and I got to work. But not the way they thought. I spent weeks digging through old home videos, scanning Elise's Instagram reels, pulling footage from family phones I'd backed up over the years. At first, it was just for the slideshow. But the more I watched, the more patterns emerged. My parents' favoritism, Elise's casual cruelty, the constant put-downs, the snide remarks, moments I'd forgotten, caught on camera like time capsules of pain. I started stitching them together. Not all of them, just enough. Subtle at first. A comment here, a clip there. And then, the kicker, a short clip Elise didn't realize I had, one from her bachelorette party. It was late, they were drunk, and Elise was sitting on the balcony with a glass of something pink in her hand. She was laughing. "I mean, it's not like I love Carson, love him," she slurred. "But he's loaded, and I've earned it after dealing with my messed up family for years. Especially Ian. God, what a martyr. He's like a side character in a movie no one wants to finish." I almost deleted it. Almost. But I didn't. I edited everything into a 7-minute video. Opened with baby photos, sweet piano music, childhood laughter. Then slowly, subtly, the tone shifted. The clips got less curated. More real. Voices sharper. Laughter more forced. Snide comments slipped in. My dad mocking my career. My mom saying Elise was the only one worth bragging about. Elise calling me the family ghost. And finally, the balcony confession. I timed it perfectly to drop right after the champagne toast, when everyone would be watching, relaxed, sentimental. I tested the timing again and again until it felt like a punch you don't see coming. And now, sitting at the kids' table, I pulled out my phone and gave a little nod to the AV guy in the corner. He was a friend from college, another video nerd, as my dad used to say. I'd slipped him a flash drive earlier and told him exactly when to cue it. The lights dimmed. Elise, standing next to Carson with her arms around him, raised her glass and said, "Thank you all for being here today. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect family, a more perfect husband, or a more perfect day." Everyone clapped. The projector flickered to life. The music started, soft, nostalgic, and I sat back in my chair, a smile tugging at my lips as the first image filled the screen. It started with innocent clips. Baby Elise in her high chair, cake smeared on her face while our mom laughed behind the camera. Elise at 5, dressed as a fairy princess, waving a glittery wand. Me, in the background, dressed as a cardboard robot. Everyone laughed at that one. I could feel the warmth ripple through the room, the kind of easy joy families cling to. They had no idea. Then came the school years. Elise holding up a trophy. Elise at a dance. Elise in graduation robes. In each clip, my parents were cheering, clapping, swarming her with praise. And just when the room was settling into that feel-good, champagne-drenched nostalgia, the tone shifted. Not the visuals, not yet, but the music. It slowed. Just a beat. Then dipped an octave. Now came the clips I'd inserted with surgical precision. Me at the same school events, standing off to the side, clapping quietly, barely acknowledged. The audio from one video cracked faintly as my dad said, "Don't zoom in on him. Focus on Elise." My aunt's voice followed. "Ian always looks like he's about to cry." Laughter. On the screen, I blinked, trying to smile. The room grew quieter. A few people glanced around. I could feel eyes start to shift toward the head table. But it wasn't overt yet. It was still deniable, still subtle, until it wasn't. The clip cut to my college graduation. I was on stage, shaking hands, in full cap and gown. My name was called. The camera zoomed in, but no cheers. No clapping. Just a hushed voice, my dad's, saying, "Finally. Now let's hope he gets a job and moves out." The video paused on my face as I walked off stage, alone, the applause in the background distant and polite. I saw my mom sit straighter in her seat. The next few clips landed like gut punches. Elise laughing as she opened an envelope filled with cash for her birthday. "They didn't give Ian anything last year," she said casually to the camera. Said he was too old for gifts. Then a sharp cut to a Christmas morning. My dad handing Elise a car key, her squealing, while I watched from the couch in silence. The camera panned past me like I wasn't even there. By now, the room was dead quiet. You could hear silverware hitting plates. The kids at my table stopped playing. I turned slightly, just enough to see my uncle lean forward, whispering urgently to my dad. My dad's face was darkening. My mom pressed a napkin to her lips. Elise. Elise wasn't smiling anymore. And then came the balcony video. It started with wind and laughter. The camera was shaky. Clearly someone else had filmed it, but I cut out everything else. Just left in the part that mattered. Elise's voice, slightly slurred. "I mean, it's not like I love Carson, love him. But he's loaded, and I've earned it after dealing with my messed up family for years. Especially Ian. God, what a martyr. He's like a side character in a movie no one wants to finish." I didn't have to look at her to feel the panic radiating off her in waves. The video held on that last line for a few seconds, long enough to land. Then a fade to black. The music returned, soft again, but with a new undertone. A single quote appeared on screen, white text against black. Sometimes, the quiet ones are the ones who remember everything. And then, the slideshow ended. The lights came back up. Someone cleared their throat. Glasses clinked awkwardly. There were murmurs now. Lots of them. I heard Carson mutter, "What was that?" loud enough for several tables to catch it. My dad stood up sharply, knocking his chair over. "What was that?" he echoed, staring straight at me. I didn't answer, just took a slow sip of water. Elise shot to her feet. Her voice was high, fake cheerful, cracking. "Okay. Haha, wow. That was, clearly not the right file. Little prank from Ian, I guess. Let's all just forget that. But she was cut off by my cousin, who turned to her with a disgusted face. Wait, was that real? You actually said that about Carson? About Ian? That's when the unraveling began. Voices started overlapping. Someone shouted from another table, "Why would you let that play during the wedding toast?" My aunt was whispering furiously to my mom. My mom kept shaking her head like she'd just woken up from a dream she didn't understand. Carson stood and walked away from the table, phone in hand. Elise called after him, her voice shrill. And I just sat there, still at the kids' table, still the invisible brother, still the family ghost. But this time, everyone saw me. The projector was off. The illusion was broken, and they had no idea what was coming next. Elise stumbled after Carson, heels clicking too loud on the wooden floor, voice climbing into a pitch I hadn't heard since we were teenagers. Carson, wait, just wait. It was a joke. That video was from years ago. You know I didn't mean it like that. Her voice cracked near the end, desperation bleeding through. But he didn't turn around. He pushed open the side door and vanished into the courtyard beyond, his best man jogging after him. The door swung shut with a dull thud. Inside, the silence cracked open like a fault line. My mom stood stiffly, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like she could somehow undo what had just happened through sheer force of will. My dad sat back down heavily, jaw tight, face pale. The man who always had something to say, some insult, some sarcastic remark, suddenly looked like he couldn't even form a sentence. I noticed his hand was shaking slightly as he lifted his wine glass. My uncle, Uncle Grant, the one who'd laughed earlier when I was seated at the kids' table, leaned across to my dad and whispered something. I didn't hear it, but whatever it was, it made my dad's eyes narrow and his lips purse hard enough to turn white. I could almost see the gears turning. Anger, confusion, calculation. The other guests were stirring now, murmuring like a wave building offshore. I could hear snippets. Was that supposed to be funny? Did Elise really say all that? Who made that video? I thought Ian was the editor. And then, wait, was that his revenge? That last one spread like a match dropped in dry grass. My cousin Jenna, Elise's age, from my mom's side, who always treated me decently, slid into the empty seat beside me. You edited that, didn't you? She said quietly. No accusation in her voice. Just curiosity, maybe a hint of awe. I didn't answer. I just gave a small smile and kept sipping my water. I mean, she looked toward the head table, where Elise was now huddled between two bridesmaids, her hands flying in frantic gestures. I can't exactly blame you. From the center of the room, the DJ cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, thank you, everyone, for that, emotional tribute. Let's, keep the party going. Up next, we've got the father-daughter dance. No. The word cut through the air like a whip. My dad stood again, louder this time. No. Turn it off. His voice wobbled, not with weakness, but something closer to rage barely held in check. There's not going to be a dance. There's not going to be any more videos. The DJ froze, hand hovering over the controls. A moment later, Elise rushed back into the room, face blotchy, mascara smudged. Where's Carson? She hissed, voice trembling with panic. Has anyone seen him? A bridesmaid leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Elise's face went pale. She turned to my mom. Mom, he's leaving. He says he needs air, but he took his keys. My mom blinked, still stunned. Maybe he's going to the car to cool down. Don't worry, sweetie. Just breathe. My dad wasn't listening. He was staring at me now. Full on. That simmering kind of glare that says, you crossed a line. His hands were clenched into fists at his side. You think that was funny? He said. You think you're clever, making a spectacle out of your sister's wedding? That was when I finally stood up. And it felt different this time. I wasn't the awkward kid fumbling for his place at the table. I wasn't the quiet brother sitting in someone else's shadow. I was just standing, calm, steady. I didn't make a spectacle, I said evenly. I just played the truth. You humiliated your family, he growled. I tilted my head. No, you humiliated yourselves. I just hit play. The room had gone still again. People watching, not sure if they were seeing a meltdown or a movie scene. Even the waitstaff had paused in the background, frozen mid-step with trays of sparkling wine. My dad took a step toward me. You've always been like this. Bitter, petty, blaming us for your own disappointment. I cut in. Because that's what I've always been to you, right? A disappointment. His mouth worked, but no sound came out. I looked around. You all saw it. For the first time, you really saw it. Not the polished version. Not the fake smiles or the holiday cards. Just the way things really were. Elise's voice cracked from behind. You're ruining everything, Ian. I turned slowly. She was standing there, bouquet crushed in her hand, dress slightly wrinkled from her hasty dash outside. Her eyes were glossy, her cheeks blotchy with tears. And for once, she didn't look golden. She looked real, human, panicked, exposed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I just said, you did that on your own. She blinked rapidly. I trusted you. No, I said. You used me. You wanted a slideshow. You just didn't think I'd have anything worth showing. Her face crumpled slightly, and right as I was about to turn away, the side door opened again. Carson stepped back into the room. His tie was loosened, his face unreadable. He didn't walk to Elise. He didn't smile. He just stood in the doorway, eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. And then, with a flat voice that made the room fall silent again, he said, Ian, can we talk? Elise gasped. Carson, why would you want to talk to him? But he didn't answer her. He was still looking at me, and something in his expression told me this night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I hesitated, not out of fear or confusion, but because part of me still couldn't believe it was happening. Carson, the golden boy, the safe choice, the man my parents doted on like some second son, was standing there asking to talk to me. Not Elise. Not my father. Me. The ghost. The side character. The one who was supposed to sit quietly at the kids' table and stay invisible. I glanced around. My mother looked confused. My father looked furious. Elise looked betrayed. And for a moment, I just stood there, letting it all settle. The weight of what I'd done, the reality of what was unraveling around them. Then I nodded once, slowly, and walked toward the side door. We stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sky was a dusky purple, the sun dipping low behind the vineyard hills. Carson leaned against the railing of the porch, running a hand through his hair. He didn't say anything at first, just stared out over the grapevines like they held the answers. Then, finally, he sighed. So that was real? He asked. That clip of Elise. I nodded. Completely unedited. The date stamps on the bottom if you look close enough. Her words, not mine. He didn't react right away. Then he let out a dry laugh, short and bitter. You know, I always had this feeling that she was with me for reasons. But I told myself I was being paranoid. That maybe I wasn't funny enough or deep enough or whatever, but that she loved me. He looked at me, and for the first time, his expression wasn't smug or polite. It was just tired. You blew up her whole wedding. I didn't blow up anything, I replied. I told the truth. She lit the fuse a long time ago. He nodded slowly, then looked back toward the reception hall. She's going to hate you for the rest of her life. She already did, I said quietly. She just smiled while doing it. We stood there for another moment before Carson pushed off the railing and walked toward the parking lot. I'm not going back in there, he muttered. Not for the dance. Not for the cake. I'm not marrying someone who talks about me like that. Carson, I called out as he reached his car. If it makes you feel any better, I didn't plan to play that clip. Not originally. But when I saw what table they put me at, and what my dad said when I got there, I shook my head. I realized they weren't going to change. None of them. Not her. Not him. Not anyone. So I stopped protecting them. He stared at me, then nodded once. Good. Someone needed to. And then he got in his car and drove off. I stood in the gravel drive for a while, letting the hum of crickets and distant music wash over me. I could almost pretend it was peaceful, if not for the faint sound of yelling filtering out from inside. When I finally walked back into the reception hall, the room had fractured completely. Elise was crying, loud and uncontrolled, surrounded by bridesmaids who didn't know whether to comfort her or back away. My father was yelling at the AV guy, demanding to know how the video got cued. The DJ looked panicked. My mother was sitting at a table with her hands folded tightly in her lap, pale and unmoving, as if trying to will herself invisible. As I stepped inside, the yelling paused for a second. Heads turned. My dad turned red. You think this is funny? He barked, pointing a shaking finger at me. You think destroying your sister's wedding makes you a man? A hero? No, I said, my voice calm. It just makes me free. He took a step toward me, but someone caught his arm. Uncle Grant. Don't, Grant muttered. Don't do it. Not here. Not now. I'm his father, my dad snapped. You think I'm going to let him embarrass this family and walk out smiling? You already embarrassed yourselves, someone said. It took a second to realize the voice had come from Jenna, my cousin. She stood up from her table and faced the room. We've all seen it for years. The favoritism. The way you treat Ian like a placeholder. It's not new. You just finally got caught on camera. Others started murmuring agreement. One by one, I noticed it. Guests shifting, frowning, looking at Elise and my parents with new eyes. The illusion of the perfect family shattered, and the cracks were spreading. I think we should go, someone muttered behind me. But I didn't move. I walked past my dad and stopped near the head table, where the untouched wedding cake still stood. 3 tiers of fondant perfection, now meaningless. Elise turned to me, mascara streaking down her cheeks, bouquet crushed in her grip. I trusted you, she whispered. No, Elise, I said, you used me. You never cared what I thought. You just assumed I'd show up and do whatever you needed. Just like always. She blinked rapidly. It was just a stupid joke at a party. It wasn't a joke to me. I cut in. None of it ever was. You all treated me like I didn't matter for years. I kept quiet. I stayed out of the way, and I let it happen. But this? Today? Sitting me at the kids' table, whispering insults in front of 100 people. What did you expect? My mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. You should have come to us. Told us how you felt. I turned to her. I did. Dozens of times. You just didn't hear me. Or maybe you just didn't care. She didn't answer. The music had stopped entirely now. The dance floor was empty. The celebration was over, even if no one had officially said it. I think we're done here, I said, then turned and walked to the back of the hall where my jacket hung on the chair. Ian, my father said, and something about the way he said my name made me pause. But when I turned, he just stared at me, face hard, mouth drawn. You'll regret this, he said. You'll regret pushing your family away. I smiled. I didn't push you away. You were never holding on. And with that, I walked out. It took 2 hours to get back to the little rental cabin I'd booked nearby. I ignored the texts flooding in, some furious, some apologetic, some unreadable in all caps. Elise called twice. Carson didn't call at all. I poured a glass of water, sat on the porch, and just breathed. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't hoping they'd notice me, or hoping they wouldn't. I had no more illusions to protect, no fake smiles to paste on my face for the sake of keeping peace in a war zone. I didn't know what would come next. Maybe they'd cut me off. Maybe Elise would start a smear campaign. Maybe they'd pretend it never happened. But whatever it was, I didn't care. Because now they knew. They all knew. And I wasn't invisible anymore. Not to them. And finally, not to myself.